Hey guys, well I was going through my service records recently and I noticed it's just over 3 years since I've done my cam belts. Not a lot of Ks on the car in that time, but it's been 3 years, so it's a good idea to change your cam belts at least every 3 years. Even if you haven't done a lot of Ks. These are the parts that I'm going to be replacing. These are old parts that I'm showing you here. I keep all my old parts. I keep every single nut and bolt that comes off the Ferrari, anything, just for future reference, and also it's sort of proof of servicing. You're going to need 2 cam belts, tensioner springs. These aren't cheap, but I suggest if you haven't replaced them ever, give them a go. They're worth it. Keeps good tension on the pulley. Two pulleys, 2 bearings I should say, and make sure you get your little washer as well. 2 of those, 2 springs, 2 cam belts, and this is the alternator belt. I did the alternator belt last time as well. I'm going to do it again because it's there. You have to undo it anyway to do the cam belts, so you might as well throw a new one on because they're like about $15 or something like that. They're really cheap. So these are the parts that I'm going to be using. Not these specific parts, these are the second-hand ones, but when my new parts arrive, I will be doing a video on that, and I'll show you how to replace these and service the pulley mounts, as well as putting the cam belts on and the alternator belt, and then tensioning it all up and torquing it all up and making sure everything's at top dead center. Anyhow, time to get into it. Okay, I'm under the wheel arch now, so obviously the first thing you're going to do is take your wheel off and then take the wheel arch liner out. Okay, you'll need a Phillips screwdriver for that, pretty easy. So the first thing we're going to do once we're inside is remove this belt cover here. This covers your pulleys and your belts for your alternator, air conditioner, that kind of thing. Now, let me point out, you probably notice if you're familiar, there's a big space right there. Okay, that space there is not normally there. So the space I'm talking about is this area here. Okay, in front of the cover for the cam belt, the front bank cam belt. There should be an air compressor, air conditioning compressor here. Mine's not there because the gas went many years ago. I removed it. Reason being, even though I live in a hot climate, it's not desirable to go driving when it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It's just not comfortable, even with air conditioning, and these air conditioners, that it never really worked that well in the first place. I don't know if you guys around the world have the same sort of story, but yeah, Italian air conditioning is not the greatest, not at today's standards anyway. So it used to struggle even in the beginning. So I took it off because it just makes it so it's redundant, and it just makes it so easy to get to all these bolts and so on. To do the cam belts. Some will undo the water pipe, so drain the water, and, or should I say the coolant, and remove the pipe, or should I say at least undo it up here, undo the clamps so you can pull it, so you can pull this back. I actually don't do it. I don't do that because it's a lot more work, and I tend to just manipulate this pipe a little bit and just pull it out a little bit, and you can get these covers. Let's see where I'm pointing. If I can get the camera in the right spot, yeah, you can get these covers off pretty easily. They're not that difficult to get off. Cover there. Okay, 10 mil bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and get that off, and then I'm going to start undoing these bolts here for the front bank and the rear bank, which is behind here. You can get to it pretty easily from under here and through the top of the engine. I tend to take the airbox off as well to give me access and a bit more light, but there he is, just there, you can see him. Yeah, we'll get them off and then expose the cam belts. Cheers. Okay, I've got the airbox off up there, yeah, and I've got the cover off the pulleys for the alternator and the water pump. Okay, so I've taken that one out there, which is the one to the top bracket of the alternator, so that's loose, and I've undone that one there. Okay, just so it's a little bit loose, and now I can pivot that, see that? So now the alternator can move. It only has to come back about that far, and you should be able to get the belt off. See that? So that's what I'm going to attempt to do. I'm just going to put the camera onto the tripod. Check that I'm in shot. So I'm going to pull that back, and I'm just simply going to run the belt round underneath, and off it comes. And this belt here is only about 3 years old, and it looks pretty good to me. For what it's worth, you might as well replace them, but mind you, this belt is pretty good, so I might put a new one on. Just put this one in the boot and or the trunk, and keep it as a spare. You never know. All right, so the next one. The next one to undo is that one there. And that one there, just loosen them off, and this whole pulley will actually come off the car when you take before you take the cam cover off. The cam belt cover. So because we need to undo this one here, and we get that by undoing that one. And there's one just there where my finger is. Sorry, there's a little light there. Put some light there. And that one there. Where are we? There we go. It's just there. Okay. So I'll get them done. By the way, these are all 17 mil to undo all these bolts up here. All these nuts in here, and if you pull the stud out, I pulled a stud out here, just there, undoing the alternator bracket. There it is there, there it is. Don't stress if you pull the stud out, just remember where it goes back. It's this little stubby one. That's going to go back in there where the alternator bracket is. Cool. Alright, I'll get back to you when I get this belt off and start getting the covers off. I should be back. Just as a note, when taking the front cam belt cover off, this little 10mm bolt, you need to take that out, otherwise you won't get it off. It's here. It joins to the oil dipstick. Okay, so it's right there. And now you should be able to basically wiggle that off. You can see it's starting to slide off there. I'm going to get under the car and do that so I can pull it off square. Alright. So this is when the water pipe gets in the way when you're trying to take this cover off. See that? It gets in the way there, okay? It's just a matter of just pulling this back a little bit. It doesn't have to come back very far, and this will slip out. Try not to pull it too hard, you know, but just enough. You can see there's a bit of movement there. Just enough to clear the mounts, which are just in there, which are just in there. You can see them there. I think, see if I can hook that up somewhere. So just in there, you can see that mount that it's on. Right there, that one there. Okay, so that's all it needs, just that little bit, and it'll come out. Okay, we're at TDC. As you can see, all the marks are good. I'm good in the camshaft and I'm good on the flywheel. So it took me a little bit because to get it right, it took me about half an hour to be honest, but I'm on my own, so it was up and down, up and down. I'm about to remove the tensioner bearing on the front bank. I'm going to film this belt, but I'm not going to film the rear belt. I'm just going to do this one. The other one's basically the same. It's just at the back of the engine, just there. So the first thing I'm going to do is undo this here. Okay, release the tension of the belt, and then I'm going to undo these nuts. These are 13. I'm going to take the whole carrier off and also the tension bearing and just check them, but I'm sure they're fine. So I'm going to release this one. It's a 19mm, I'm pretty sure. Let me just check that. Yep, it's 19mm, so I'm going to release that, and then I'm going to undo the other ones. So I've got a camera in front of me, so I'll do the best I can. They're nice and tight. Can't seem to get that one. Okay. I'll reposition myself because it's pretty hard to get. Okay, I need more leverage, so I'm going to go for my... I'm just going to quickly get my large ratchet. See if this one fits in. Got some leverage. That's got him. Okay, now I should be able to use my smaller one. I was just using my really large torque wrench then, just so I had some extra leverage. And there we go. You can see there. Okay. So a good thing to have is your tools ready. See how that releases? Spring like that. You can just simply slip the belt off from the tensioner. Hope you saw that. And then off it comes. Now I'm going to take this whole thing off. I'm going to remove the bearing first. You can take the whole thing off together. Oh. Okay, so thick washer, thin washer, bolt, thick washer, thin washer, bolt. Tensioner bearing comes off, and as you can see, they're in pretty good condition because they are new. So that's going to be the front. So I'm going to put it back on the exact same way. So I'm going to mark that side. Alright, and then it's a matter of just taking off these three here, and then this unit comes off, and then we'll have a look at that. Alright, I'll get that off. That's 1, 2, 3 bolts. I'll get that off, 13mm. Take that off and then we'll have a look at it on the bench. Okay, here we go. Now to get this apart, it's very easy. There's a spring inside here. Okay, you'll get a bit of grease coming out. What you need to do, make sure I'm in shot here. Okay, you need to depress that. See that? Push it down. When you push it down, you pull it out from here. So I'll try and do it so we can see it. So push it down, and now I'm going to pull up. I'm going to pull this away. Up and away, see that? There's a little lobe there. It sits in here. And you just pull that away, and out comes the piston and the spring. Now these springs are fairly new. They're not very old. If you haven't replaced yours before and you've got no idea, replace them. They're not super expensive. They're not super cheap, but they're not super expensive. And I'm just going to clean that out and re-grease that. But once again, that grease is only about 2.5, 3 years old. And just simply slot it back in, push it down. That hole, where are we? There we go, that hole. It's going to go over the top. And you're just going to depress it in, like that. Making sure that this part here sits over that lobe to begin with. Sometimes it helps with 3 hands. Let me just get this started first. There we go. And then in, up, and then simply hook it on, and it's back on again. They're pretty simple. Okay, so push it in, lift it up, pop it out. Okay, I'm going to clean that out, and then I'm going to put the cam belt on. Okay, parts are clean. Now I'm basically just going to re-grease them. Okay, so some nice grease. Messy job. Always use grease. Pack it good. You can always squeeze out the excess. This is exactly the same grease that I used last time. And the stuff that came out was black. Put some there. Slide that in. Just going to go in like that. So pop some grease inside there as well. Plenty, as you can see. Has a little escape hole just there, so any excess grease will escape out of there. Just orientate so he hooks on. And just a smidgen. And then put him back together. Okay, and snap, and it's in. as you can see. As that comes in, you'll see excess grease come out. There it goes. Don't be worried about that. So push it in, get rid of the excess. That way when you depress it, you're not going to be seeing excess grease pour out. They don't move a lot in and out, so we're not going to need heaps and heaps of grease. Okay, so that's basically the tensioner spring. Obviously, if you're replacing the spring, you just replace the spring. It's pretty easy. I'm not replacing the springs in this service, so this orientates onto the car that way. So the nuts exactly the way they came off. They're exactly the nuts exactly going back on. These are nylox. You can replace them if you want. Tensioner bearing back on, and sided on, washer, and this bolt had a bit of rust around here, just a little bit of surface rust I noticed, so I cleaned it up on the wheel and make it nice again. And that goes through. Now obviously there's tension on there, so it's not going to go all the way in unless you take up some of that tension like that, and then it will go in, but yeah, and then it will screw in once you take up a bit of tension like that. Okay, so that's ready to go back on the car. Alright, better start charging up my camera. So I just wanted to point out, there was a little, these are my homemade cam locks, there was a little flaw in my homemade cam locks. I've got some vice grips on the front bank at the moment, on the cams to hold them, because it's obviously in my hand. The flaw was, if I wanted to remove the tensioner bearing and the whole unit, I couldn't undo this top one here. There we go. I couldn't undo that nut because this part of the cam lock there sat like about there, and it just wouldn't allow me to get it off. Now I could undo that with a spanner, just an ordinary spanner, okay, but then I couldn't pull it off because couldn't pull it off the thread because that was in the way. So just something to point out, something I need to look at with my homemade cam lock. Okay. Okay, here's something to really watch out for. I'm not 100% sure about this, so I'm going to get in touch with Superformance. I've just pulled a cam belt out of its box. Here's the new cam belt, and of course I'm checking it with the old cam belt. Now you would think that the older cam belt would be a little bit longer than the new cam belt. I'm not sure if I can show you this. However, the new cam belt fits around the old one. I mean, if you can see that, the new one's on the inside. Sorry, the old one's on the inside. The new one's on the outside. So even on the inside, we've got like a huge gap. So I've checked the numbers, and the numbers are different. You probably can't see that number there, but this part number is 111334. 111334. Okay. This one is 94095. Clearly different. Okay, now on my box, on the front there, I have my part number. You can see that. 111334. Same as the old belt. However, on the bottom of the box, I have this number here, 94095-101R254. Now, I don't know why both Dayco belts, I don't know why I have a different number on the box as opposed to this number here. So I have to check first. So the first thing I'm going to do is count each of the trying to get it in shot, each of these. Okay, each of these teeth I'm going to count and see if they are the same count. But I don't know why, but the new belt is bigger. So if I hold them together, there's the difference. So this end of the belt, yeah, is flush. And look how much bigger, longer the new belt is. I'm not putting that on without checking. So pays to check, eh? So I just counted the teeth on the belts. My old belt, I counted 96. The new belt, I counted 100. It's that much bigger. This can't possibly be the correct belt. Alright, time to contact Superformance. I'll let you know how I get on. Okay, I've got my new belts. So finally the new ones have arrived. So I've put this new one on. I've checked them. They are 96 teeth. So I'm going to try and film this with a camera in my hand. It's very awkward, so forgive the camera work, please. As you can see, teeth are in up there. Okay, and I've got it clamped, and I've got it clamped on the other side there. Okay, and also it's clamped there. Okay, with a set of vice grips, and the marks are right, as you can see. So I'm still all at top dead center. Just doing one belt at a time. I'm not going to film the second belt, I'm just going to film this one. So now what I'm doing is I'm just pulling that down to make sure that it's on the drive pulley down here. Okay, so and I've checked the drive pulley for a bit of play. I feel pretty good, giving it a wiggle. I can't feel any play in them at all. So that's really good. If they move, if these are moving around, it's a bigger job. All that's got to come off. So it's a bigger job to replace the bearings, because there's an inner and an outer bearing. So you can see there, I've got that hooked. Now I'm going to pin that. I'm going to pin this one here. Okay, or clamp it at the bottom, either one. But I'm going to clamp that one. I need two hands for that, so I'm going to have to put the camera down. And then I'm going to put the tensioner bearing on, and I'll show you how to do that. So with the tensioner bearing, come in from underneath the belt, this way, hook the body underneath the belt, so it's resting on top of the bearing. Put that one on first, just locate it slightly, and then twist and pivot it up to the top too. Once you've got it there, push it in and on it will go, as you can see. And another thing I've done is I've depressed the tensioner bearing as well. I've depressed the spring and locked it off. I'm going to release that once I put the nuts on. So I'll put those nuts on now, the 3 nuts and spring washers. Okay, so they're wave washers, and yeah, should be cool. Okay, the nuts are on. Now I'm not sure what the torques are. I've had a look, and once again it tells us the torque for the bearing, that one tells us that. Pretty sure it's 41 foot-pound, but it doesn't tell us what those little 3 securing nuts are. So just do them tight, but not super tight. Nothing wrong with putting a little bit of thread tight. What am I talking about? Loctite, I should say. Yeah, 2, 4, 3. This one here. Put a little bit of that on the studs, and then torque them up. But yeah, the torques I'm not sure of. It doesn't say. So I've done this before, and I a few years ago, so you forget things. But I don't recall torques for them, and I didn't have any problems with it anyway. I just did them up hand tight, but tight. Okay, I'm going to tighten them up and then check the belt, make sure it's all good, release the tensioner by undoing this one here, and then just checking the belt and making sure it's all that all the pulleys are still at top dead center, and that the teeth are all where they need to be, all seating nicely, as in up there, like that. Okay, I'll do that, get back to you. Okay, I've got both belts on now, and both tensioner bearings and carriers have been serviced. They're all back on. It's not torqued up, it's not haven't got the right tension just yet. That's what we're about to do, but before we do that, we're going to make sure, just going to go around all the pulleys and make sure that all the pulleys are all in correctly and everything's still at top dead center. You can see my yellow marks there. So all the cams are still lined up. There. And also I'm going to check the oil peripheral, should I say the oil cap, and check inside there and make sure. It's a bit hard to see for you guys, but I assure you it's on its marks. Okay, so nothing's moved, so all is good. So as I said, I'm just going to go around, check, make sure the teeth of the belt all nicely in, all around on both belts, all 6 pulleys, especially the drive pulley down the bottom there, especially that one down there. Sorry, no, not the tensioner bit, that one. Where are we trying to get in the shot? A bit hard to see. Yeah, I don't think you can see that. The light's terrible, so I'll go in from underneath. Those ones I'm talking about, the drive pulleys. Making sure that around both of those as well. And top and bottom pulleys are all good. And then we shall tension. The way I tension these is I slacken it off. Both tensioner bearings, I slacken them off here, okay, and just that little bit so they can move on the spring back and forth. Now I put socket on here, 36mm I believe, on there, and I crank the engine, okay, and I crank it until, this is the Ferrari method, and I crank it until I see this bearing push against the belt the furthest. So when you see it coming around and it's pushing towards the belt, putting tension on the belt, just as it gets to the point where it's going to start going back the opposite way, that's where you stop and lock it off. that's the particular method I use, and then it's basically a feel of the belts. They're not going to need a lot. I can feel it already. They're feeling pretty good already, so they're not going to need too much. And that's the way I do it. The tension on the belts is really, really important. You don't want a belt slipping a tooth. Otherwise, big problems. Okay, I'm going to now take the clamps off once I've had a good check with all the teeth. Take the clamps off and just do the belts up, sorry, the tensioner bearings up where they are, and then give it a bit of a turn, and then I'm going to lock them off. Okay. Okay, cranking clockwise. I've got the socket down on the flywheel. Should I say not the flywheel? Just there. Pulley, I can't do the camera work. There. On the crank, I should say. Okay. And we're watching the bearing. So I'm going to turn it now. Hopefully everything turns nicely. And you can see the tensioner bearing pulling in there. So you're turning it until it goes in, and you'll notice when I turn it, it pulls in and then releases. So we want to make sure we've got it tensioned like that, so we're holding the socket down. So it works if you've got two hands, so as it comes around, giving it a few revolutions. Okay. Get that front one. Just doing the front one now. Okay. I'm not torquing these yet. I'm just tightening them down so they're not going to move. Now I'm going to do some revolutions. Quick check of the tension. Feel pretty good actually. That one feels a bit tighter than the front bank, but that one actually feels pretty good. I'm going to do some revolutions of the engine. Now I've put little yellow marks on the belt and the pulley just before I started to turn it. So what I'm looking for now is I'm going to bring it around until that front belt certainly looks a lot looser. Move around until my marks match. And that's curious. That mark is for the bottom pulley. Okay, so all feels pretty good there, but are we all at top dead center? That's the question. Okay, so I'm just going to tension this one up a little bit more. That needs a bit more. I'll get that done, and it's a bit easier to move in without the camera. I'll get that done and I'll get back to you. Okay, so I think I'm happy where they are, so I'm just torquing them off now. There we go, it's a 41 foot-pound. Just check the front one again. Or should I say the rear one? Click, click, there we go. Alright, so now I'm just going to spin the crank again a few times. Just check everything, get all my markings all back on track, and then checking for top dead center and making sure everything's lined up and all the belts are good and the tension's good. And then it's basically put the water pump belt back on and the alternator belt, and if you've got an air conditioner, obviously your air conditioner after your covers, air conditioner, that should be done. But I'll get back to you for the belts and so on. Okay, just checking everything. Belts are on and tensioned at TDC, at the crank, also TDC. I'm just trying to focus for you. My marks, a bit hard to see, isn't it? There it is. The marks are right, and underneath the car, all my belts, all the pulleys I should say, line up on both sides, and up there as you can see, and the tension is good. A little bit of play, you can see that I can wiggle it just that little bit. 45 degrees either way, and they're both the same. 45 and a little bit of play. Don't be scared to give them a pull. Move them around, and I've cranked it over a number of times, so it all looks pretty good. Okay, and they're all torqued down, 41 foot-pound for the tensioner bearing bolts once you've locked them off. Okay, now I'm just going to put the other belts on and the covers back on, and I should be done. Okay, make sure when you're putting your covers on that you remember where to put your little bracket for your belt cover, okay, for your pulley cover. And these are the two long ones. This is the shorter one up here, shorter bolt. So there's 3 for the front. Okay, and belt, when you put the belt on, make sure it's seated in correctly in the right channels. Okay, so have a look inside there as well. Okay, in there, on that one, up that one, and around. And this is where you tension it from this bit here. Push that out, feel it tight, you know, and good tension on there. Check the long end as well, and then I haven't done it up, that's why it's pretty loose. And then you're all good, and then it's the alternator belt. Okay. When adjusting the alternator belt, okay, you got to tighten this nut here. It's got a bolt on the other side. You're tightening this nut. Once you put a bit of tension in here, I put a piece of wood in here, and I tension against the bracket and this, and I just push this towards the front of the car, and then I tighten that one. It's really hard. This is probably the hardest one to to do up. So as you can see, I've taped up a 17mm spanner on the back, so then I can use two hands at the front, and it doesn't keep falling off, because it will keep falling off. Unfortunately, I've taped on my ratchet one at the back, so I'm going to have to use the old standard one, 17mm for the front, but no big deal. Should have thought about that before I did it, but nevertheless, it should work. Okay, so a bit of wood in here, just in there, bit of wood just between here, and then lever that so the alternator pushes forward, and tighten that one up, and it should be good. Okay, covers are on, as you can see, all tightened up. Water pump, new water pump belts on. Nice, not too tight, but not loose. Okay, the covers are on, belts are all done up, all tightened. I've put the fuel filter back on. Well, it's not the fuel filter, it's the vapor. It's a vapor filter, this one here. I've just got to connect one hose at the top. This hose just needs to go down and connect up to there, and we're all done. Obviously the airbox has got to go on. So airbox, that little hose there goes from the plenum to the vapor filter, and we're all good to go. Hopefully when I start it, I don't bend all my valves. Alright, I shall get back to you in a sec. Okay, so it's all back together apart from the wheel arch. So with no further ado, I'm going to try start up. Wish me luck. Okay. That seems fine to me. Just needs to warm up a bit, obviously. That noise has got nothing to do with the cam belts. A little bit of smoke here or there, tiny little bit of smoke coming out of here, which is expected when you start doing all this kind of thing. I painted my headers as well, so that's probably the header paint curing. Alright, all good. I'll let it warm up.